Hi, I'm Kurt Roth, president of 505 Sports Venture Foundation, and this is episode 69 of the Talking Grammar podcast.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Jeff Grammer with the Albuquerque Journal, and this is the Talking Grammar podcast. Glad you're watching, glad you're listening. However you are here, much appreciated for this and all our shows on the Albuquerque Journal Podcast Network. Glad you guys are a part of it. And this week's episode, as you saw, is Kurt Roth, and he is the guy kind of spearheading the NIL collective for UNM athletes to get paid for their name, image, and likeness. And I think it's going to be an interesting conversation. I think you guys will probably learn a little bit about what NIL and the college athletics landscape is right now, some of the challenges he faces, some of the challenges UNM faces, and you'll learn a little bit more about what UNM athletes are going through right now as part of this new NIL world where they can get paid as college athletes, which is still very new, and last couple of years is really when it was allowed by the NCAA, and it always used to be illegal prior to that. So whole new world for college athletics, and it's a good world. College athletes are getting a little bit of the money from a very lucrative college athletics business. So Kurt Roth will tell you a little bit more about that. And at the end of the show, I do want to remind you about a subscription deal, digital subscription deal that the Albuquerque Journal has going on right now for sports fans. And more about that at the end of the show. For now, hope you enjoyed this conversation with Kurt Roth, the founder and president of the 505 Sports Venture Foundation. All right, Kurt, well, welcome to the show. I know you actually fairly recently have been on this show. It was just in the springtime, episode 62, for anybody that was following when we were still just going with the audio format. But welcome to our new digs here.
Oh, it's fantastic. It looks great.
It looks like we know what we're doing. I know Brandon Mason, your guy, was giving me a hard time about the cups. And I'm sure you saw the Brandon Mason episode just last week.
I did. And that leads me to a question. If I was episode 69, I guess there's been episode 62. There's been 6 episodes since.
Yes.
As I recall, 2 of them were Richard Pitino,
Yep.
the head of UNM basketball. You had Jamal Baker,
Yep.
who is at his 4th school. He will play professional basketball, is going to have a breakout season. And then we had Jamal Mashburn Jr., who led the Mountain West in scoring, has improved incredibly over the summer. I've seen him play. Looks like a deadly three-point shooter. Will be possibly player of the year in the Mountain West, and who knows, across the country. Then we had the boss of all bosses, Eddie Nunez, on, followed up by my good friend and business partner, Brandon Mason, Mr. New Mexico basketball. Now, that's all after me. My question to you is, now I'm back. Was Lobo Lucy busy today? Is that why I'm here?
Well, the list of guests has shrunk quite a bit, so I'm going to be calling you every other week now.
Okay.
I did say Jamal Baker and Jamal Mashburn Jr. were great, and I've told the guys around here, I said, I'm going to have more Lobo players on, and you know all the players, but those are 2 of the best interviews on the team, probably, and I'm sure all the other guys have really good stories. They're not probably as seasoned and comfortable in front of the microphone as those 2, but I might have messed up a little bit by having probably 2 of the best well-spoken interview guys right out of the gates. So I do want to talk to you a little bit about those guys and your relationship with some of the guys on the team. And for those that don't know, though, you with the 505 Sports Venture Foundation, because we did just have you on in the spring, I'm not going to go too in depth on the recap, but what's the introductory explainer to people that don't know yet what NIL and what 505 Sports Venture Foundation is?
Well, that changes regularly. Because we become part of the fabric here in New Mexico, 505 Sports Venture has. And the terminology is not so new anymore. People are understanding that the kids can get paid. They get it. And it's become very public. Some schools like Texas have actually published totals that they've paid. I think Texas announced they'd paid over $5.5 million to basketball players.
Just basketball.
Just basketball. Not exactly sure that's the exact number, but it was over $5 billion. So that's the landscape. People get it. What we're trying to get across now is that it's the way things are. Will it change? Maybe. Is it going to change today or tomorrow? No. Is it vital for the University of New Mexico to compete on the playing fields to have a solid NIL program? The answer is yes. And that's the message that we're getting across now. People are hearing it and coming along with us.
You did tell this. I will ask you to repeat this story. Why you? Why did you take this on? Obviously, you have a background with UNM and a background with UNM athletics and just been interested. But why don't you kind of repeat what you've told me before as to why you thought this was worth your time?
Well, first, people have told me recently that I have a mental illness, and this is nuts. But what I wanted to do, I have been an avid Lobo supporter. I'm a Lobo for life is a term that was coined when I was on the foundation. And for almost 30 years now, I've had some financial wherewithal to be able to travel from New York to Albuquerque and to other places to follow the Lobos, specifically, but not limited to men's basketball. I've been able to donate money. I've been able to spend time as a trustee. I spent 8 years on the foundation. I also don't have children. So what's my legacy? Could be UNM. And UNM treated me well. My parents, who were educators, not wealthy, told my brother and sister and I that they would pay for college. It didn't matter where I went. Well, I'll keep the story short, but without any scholarship aid, with a little stretching to become a resident, I became a resident 3 years. My parents paid $2,940 for 4 years of college at UNM. And in the 70s, I'm sure it still is, in the 70s, the UNM faculty was awesome. I had great professors. I had a great college experience. Since that time, as a lawyer, I've done $1 billion in real estate transactions, and the best deal I've ever seen is the one I got at UNM. So when I saw the sports part change with this NIL, I had a short meeting with Richard Pitino, and we talked about it. And I said, heck, what a great place to come to retire, basically, or I guess it's not retirement, it's move and start a new business. And the one thing I say as an entrepreneur, and I've been self-employed running a law firm my entire life, professional life, is that the combination of athletics and sort of law and contracts and the fact that this didn't happen ever before. We're kind of making it up as we go along was extremely exciting. So that and the combination of UNM, it just happened.
You obviously, UNM, and I've said this, you could say it, but in your position, some people may be skeptical as to whether or not to believe it. I can vouch for around the Mountain West and just out West in general, not just conference. I don't want to just isolate it to the Mountain West Conference. You guys were out in front of this quite a bit, and it helped UNM athletics over the last couple of years because you guys were ahead of the curve on NIL in general. And I'm curious how fun, if that's the right word, how much have you enjoyed doing this? Is it more than did you bite off more than you can chew? Are you regretting maybe making this your retirement new job?
No, I didn't bite off more than I can chew. We're just finding out how much we can chew. And my regret, not a regret at all. It's been a blast.
It's been a lot of work, though.
It's a ton of work. It never ends. It's a full-time, it's a job and a half. Now, I will say, in fact, we're having a meeting of our board this afternoon. When I started this, it was myself and my good friend Rick Siegel.
Yeah.
And we worked out of the back of a car he lent me. Now I have a staff, an office. We have some people out beating the bushes for money, talking to local businesses. We have a plan. So it's kind of morphed into an organization. Now, the hard part of that is, what does the organization look like? There's a standard business model, but no one's ever done this before.
Right.
So, and we had some really interesting ground, let's say, to navigate the relationship with the university, the student athletes who are not as sophisticated perhaps and not represented. So it's hard work, but I love it.
The landscape, I want to get back into more specific about 505 here in a minute. Let's go broader for just a minute to understand the landscape of NIL and the NCAA right now. The NCAA, obviously this is allowed, but it's very clearly still, I guess I would say, not comfortable in the eyes of, or a lot of the people running the NCAA and athletic directors are still a little uncomfortable. I'm going to get in a moment to the Eddie Nunez comment and your guys' relationship together. But the NCAA in general, I'm curious what you think or how you would describe the current landscape of the NCAA's partnership or working relationship with the NIL world right now. Are they okay with NIL, or are they still trying to find a way to not let it really happen?
It's hard for me to really know because that's sort of an inside NCAA position, but they've been horrible.
Yeah.
Not with us, just in general, they're grasping. Now, I did see something. I think they're run by smart people.
Right.
So you wonder how they could get in. They created this.
Yes.
The NCAA's obstinance and failure to deal with for years. I mean, the model was out there. We go back to Major League Baseball in the 70s. The owner said, no, you're on our team for life. And every league down the line, all professional leagues, finally lost in court or agreed to settle. The NCAA held out forever, and they got punished. They lost total control, which is a result of being obstinate and rock-headed. Now, every once in a while, they make a recommendation. Some are okay. There seems to be one out now. There seems to be a little movement toward getting the schools a little more involved, which the intent probably is to get the NIL guys like me less involved, give the school a little more control, which ultimately is what's going to happen, I believe.
And should have probably a long time ago.
Yeah, I agree. So they're trying. Now they're sponsoring cheap shots back in Washington in Congress. They have hearings in the Senate. They haven't called a person from an NIL collective yet. It's a joke. And the good thing for groups like us for now, who are operating under rules that are undefined, we follow the law. And we know that, the idea that in Washington, NIL legislation is going to get passed when one party can't even figure out who's in charge is ridiculous. And in light of events of the world, the fact that Congress even looks at NIL is embarrassing.
And that is sort of, though, as you alluded to, that's sort of been the history of the NCAA on, I don't want to say just player rights issues, but frankly, on a lot of player rights issues and giving the players throughout the process, the student athletes, a little more here or there. I mean, it seemed like they were fighting for a while cost of attendance, and they were fighting for a while stipends to live off campus and food allowances and stuff like that. All of that eventually has come forward so the student athletes can get all that. And that's where we're at with this as well. It's not... The idea, I still think some people's uncomfort with NIL and just the term that they hear comes from the idea that they think all these athletes are making millions of dollars, which even if they were, who cares, really? It doesn't, if they're still playing for your team and still playing college athletics and keeping some athletes in college longer than they otherwise would have been, I don't understand why that's necessarily a bad thing. But ultimately, I think there's still a misconception about what all this is and how much money they're getting paid and all that kind of stuff. Your relationship with UNM and how much athletes at UNM are getting paid and stuff like that, I want to get into in a second. But Eddie Nunez, I called on the episode I had with him a couple weeks ago, a reluctant participant in the NIL world. And my word was reluctant, and his partnership with UNM and you guys, I'm curious about, because I know he was an athletic director like all the rest who was kind of trying to keep NIL and collectives at an arm's distance because he kind of had to, because the rules were changing all the time for him. I want you to listen to first what Eddie said about the relationship with you guys and NIL in general, and then we can respond to that.
Well, I'll say, first of all, I'm not reluctant on our student athletes generating revenue for their name, image, and likeness. That, to me, look, as a former student athlete, I think that's awesome. If they can do that, you saw Luke Whitesong, you've seen some others between Sadie's and other companies here locally that have decided we wanted to partner up. Where I was a little reluctant, but it wasn't because of the individuals running it or the organization, was the collective. because for me, my concern is still because we're not 100% fully funded in all the sports.
Right.
And that is a priority. You know, our teams are still fundraising to help their overall budgets. So now we've made strides since I got here. I mean, I think we're maybe at 50% most sports. We're closer to 70 now. We still got to get all the way to 100. So for my hesitancy from the beginning was more so because I didn't know how it was going to affect our fundraising, and were we going to be able to both live in the same space, understanding we all want to get to the same goal. We all want to be successful. We all want to give our student athletes an opportunity to generate the revenue that they can. But I was trying to figure out, how do I get there and still get the Lobo Club where it needs to be? Yeah. So what I did really last year was I was supportive of it. I give Kurt Roth and the 505 Sports Venture a lot of credit for coming and sitting down with our compliance office, sitting down with Dave Williams, my deputy, and really just having dialogue and understanding, look, what are some of the things you want us to be careful with? How do you want us to? Because yes, they could have gone out of the gates and said, we're going to do this. And they did. They were ahead of many in our league. But for me, it was, look, I always trusted the individuals that were a part of this group, but as individuals. But doing what we're trying to do now, everybody was trying to understand, what does this mean? What does the collective mean? What are the guidelines? What are the parameters? So where we are today is I sit back here and say, okay, we just finished this past fiscal year. We've fundraised more than ever been done. And again, testament to our Lobo fans and supporters. And we were able to do what we needed to do for the collective group. They did what they needed to do. We keep an arm's length away from them because that's what the NCAA wants us to do. Yeah. It makes it challenging because at times we cannot communicate as well as we probably need to or should. But we're working with them as much as we can to make sure that this path forward is the right path. So yeah, I'm supportive of them. I think we need them now more than ever.
So a lot there. Nice long answer from Eddie. And from, as I told him, from where I sit watching this unfold in front of me with you guys as a collective and him as a athletic director in university, I would say reluctant was the term I used. They were nervous about getting involved and working with you guys at first. Here now, 2 years later, you guys are partners, whatever exactly that means. I'll let you explain. But how has the relationship with UNM evolved over the last couple of years, and is reluctant accurate for their initial work with you guys?
Did he say that, or
no?
Did
I
you
did.
say
That's
that?
My word. Definitely my word.
That's a good word, and you have to understand. I was frustrated from the get-go because they were reluctant. I guess is a fair word, but I had to sit just like a contract negotiation. Where are they coming from? Now, Eddie Nunez has been involved in college athletics since he was a freshman in college. Yeah. He's risen to the top. He's at a Division I school. He's got a huge budget to manage. He's got the government watching him. He's got you guys watching him. We know what nonsense his predecessor had to go through. There's a lot of pressure in that position. I wouldn't want to be him. He had a way of doing things that he had experienced since he was 18, or probably I think he was recruited. I think he walked on one time. But from that time on, the rules have been different. So, and he's risen to the top in an industry. How it has to be difficult. The game changed overnight. So at first, for me, I saw it as an opportunity. I'm an entrepreneur. Eddie and Dave Williams, they're administrators. It's a little different. Yeah. They have high-pressure jobs. They have a huge budget, but they have to answer to someone else, ultimately, whether it's the president, the governor, the regents. I wouldn't want that job. I'll say it again. So they were reluctant, and I also think they were rightfully concerned that the NCAA, if they were going to put their foot down, might pick a New Mexico instead of Duke, because we all know what Jerry Tarkanian said years ago. Yep. I think it was North Carolina or North Carolina State. He said when the investigation was finished, they were so upset at North Carolina State, they put Cleveland State on another year of probation. And so rightfully so, I think there was concern that if we did something wrong, or even if we did something that was perfectly legal in New Mexico, that the NCAA would say, no, we're going to take a stand, and it might be on Eddie Nunez's neck.
And essentially, if the NCAA wanted to make an example to tell everybody, look, we're going to come down hard on this, it's going to be in New Mexico they come down on. They're not going to come down on one of their maybe bigger cash cow kind of programs that maybe are a little higher profile than New Mexico.
Yeah, that would be unique if they did that.
Yeah.
So they had viable concerns, and we worked through it. And they are, arm's length in certain. Eddie said we keep arm's length. Yeah. I think there's some arm's length, but I was in the athletic department yesterday. We meet with marketing. We meet with the Lobo Club. We meet with Dave Williams regularly. They're great. They make suggestions because, again, we don't know what works. We don't know where to go all the time. I have a great staff. I have a great Sobel Solutions, who are my partner, or high-end marketing folks. But this is new. So the input from UNM on a regular basis is invaluable. We have to have it, and they've been great.
This partnership and working relationship that you have with UNM, and we're talking in terms of David Williams, Eddie Nunez, and the administration, when it comes to the coaching, a lot of people want to know what your role specifically can be and what it is with recruiting, and how a new recruit gets to UNM to play whatever sport and has an NIL deal in place so quickly. What is the role of a collective, and yours specifically, with the recruiting process, if any?
No, I can't say none, but it's virtually none. We don't get involved with players. I'm a fan. I watch a lot of college sports. I read periodicals, but I don't know the kids, the high school kids, right, or even the transfers, which is a whole different ball game. World, yeah. So no, we have no contact with kids unless they make a visit to UNM. And then on occasion, not always, we will meet and talk about what we've done in the past. We make no promises. We, of course, can't, under the NCAA recommendations, not under New Mexico law. They're different. Under New Mexico law, theoretically, an NIL collective could sign contracts with 100 kids for one sport, and it would be contingent on if they came. Yeah. But because of the NCAA's poo-pooing that, we are very rarely, we're not involved in recruiting. We're part of the process. Exactly. We don't reach out to anyone.
Yeah. I guess that kind of highlights, too, the reluctance maybe of a David Williams and an Eddie Nunez, where they know the NCAA will come down on them if you guys do that. But New Mexico law, to be very clear, and a whole lot of states around this country have laws that have not only would you not be in trouble for doing that, some of the laws actually get fairly specific and say, yeah, do it. I wouldn't want to say encourage it, but actually are written in a way that almost encourage you guys to get involved and to help the student athletes in ways that they're not currently being helped. But if you do that, the NCAA would then come down on the school.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I gave a little talk at Academy High School yesterday, and there was some questions about law, and there are two types of law for it. Just in general, there's what's written down, statutory law, and then there's common law, which occurs after someone brings a court case, and the judges or a jury interpret what the law is. Well, there's no common law on any of these NIL cases yet. And some of them are actually punitive toward the NCAA. I made a joke about being on the last 10 seconds of One Shining Moment if the NCAA came after 505. I kind of would relish it from a legal perspective because we're following the law of the state of New Mexico. Yeah. And the NCAA is a non-for-profit. How can they tell anyone who's running a legal business what to do? Yeah. So it's an interesting time, and that's part of the attraction that I found to this whole deal is no one knows what it really means yet.
All right, let's shift that then a little more specific to UNM. I want to start with international athletes. A lot of international athletes at UNM for various sports. And what are the rules with international athletes and getting an NIL?
Nobody knows. The NCAA doesn't have any rules. It's not NCAA rules when they talk about.
Which kind of, again, highlights the whole complexity of all this. Is like the NCAA has all these rules that don't actually apply to the New Mexico State rule. The New Mexico State law doesn't actually apply to international players either. But then there's the whole other entity which has to do with student visas and how they are able to come here to go to school.
It's basically the federal government.
Yeah.
And I've heard opinions from, immigration and naturalization to Homeland Security. Who's involved in this? And can you imagine how I find it utterly ridiculous that immigration could care whether a backup player on a Division I basketball team makes $5,000.
Right.
It's ludicrous. But what we've come up with, we've developed a sort of a network there, and UNM, a couple of 3 UNM players have agents. One agent has had 2 players here. We formed a group that we exchange emails, have Zoom conferences with agents, accountants, immigration attorneys. And basically, I think we kind of followed the lead. Arizona, if you look at their roster, I think 7 foreign players out of the scholarship guys. There are some restrictions. The immigration law basically says that kids on a certain visa cannot work off campus. Now, if I pay Joe Italy from Rome $1,000 for his picture, which is what name, image, and likeness is, he's not working.
Right.
I can use his image. He sold it to me. Just like if I'll use an example, Sebastian Forsling.
Yeah.
If he had a car, is immigration going to say he can't sell it? Well, it's not working. He had a car. He sold it. He has his image. He sold it. He's not physically working. And I think if you really get back into immigration concepts, the idea was they don't want kids coming over on visa and taking American jobs. Yep. So that's kind of the immigration thing. They're here for school. So if they're on a team, on a track team, for instance, UNM has a lot of
cross country in particular.
Right. Golf.
Yep.
Why can't the kids earn money for their name, image, likeness? They're in school.
Yeah.
They're playing their sport. They're not taking anyone else's job.
And legally, you're pretty confident that they could if they wanted to, at least under New Mexico law. But therein lies the problem with some of this stuff is then you got the federal government overseeing it, you got the state government overseeing it, and you got the NCAA overseeing it, which in this particular case, I know the NCAA actually doesn't really have an opinion. I don't think they have.
I haven't seen any. Well, I don't find it a problem. I think it's fun.
Yeah.
Being a lawyer for 38 years with rules and regulations and statutes, so this is like wide open. So as long as we're consistent, there's room for some bad stuff.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. But we have the law is explicit in New Mexico. I was stunned when I read it. One of the first calls I made was to Brandon Mason. I said, Mace, you should read this law. You can't believe what's legal. So, that's sort of an inside joke in the statute of limitations. Is right.
I know he has some international players now too at going to his prep school. So this goes beyond the college level too, and I think and that's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with it, in my opinion. As it pertains to UNM though, specifically, how many Lobo athletes right now are under contract, if that's even the right term, under some sort of contract with you guys? Is that the right term?
That is the right term. Every person, we have players under contract who receive no money, but we have the right to market their name, image, and likeness. We have the right to use them at photo shoots and whatnot. We have players who are under contract because they received a few dollars to pay for an unreimbursed medical procedure. Mm-hmm. Everyone's under contract who receives any benefit from us. And again, some who don't receive a financial benefit. I should know this. I don't. I'd say we're about 50.
Okay. About 50 student athletes. The goal is all of them?
All of them. That's my goal. People are telling me I'm out of my mind. I won't quit till we get everybody something.
Obviously, that covers a lot of the sports then that people don't associate when they think off the top of their head about NIL. It's not just the men's basketball, the women's basketball, the football. You are talking cross country, track, golf team, stuff like that.
Well, we have a softball, a couple of women in softball, tennis. I'm headed to the baseball golf outing on Friday, and baseball is one of my passions. UNM is set up to be a perennial national contender, and what we're missing is it doesn't have to be large, an NIL program. What we found, and I won't get specific, but students can play as graduate students, but the scholarship changes. Ooh. And so a graduate student might have to pay a lot more money than he or she did as a senior. And so specifically at least one, if not two or three of our athletes who would have stayed transferred because they had another year or two at graduate school, and there was an NIL benefit to simply make up the difference in the tuition.
How does a football player in season, how do you use them compared to now that basketball's starting, how do you use a Lobo basketball player for some of your events and some of your just initiatives during the season as opposed to in the off season?
Okay, well, first let's talk football, because we had a young man, Deuce Jones, who came to us. And it was really a heartwarming, I don't want to sound maudlin, but Deuce came to us. He was not on our radar, and he had an idea. And he grew up in a single-parent home, and they were low income. And one of the things that stuck with him is he went to school on the first day of school without a backpack and without supplies. And it was horrible.
Yeah.
He was ostracized. So he comes to New Mexico, and his sister said, okay, you're a big shot. You better do something. So on his own, he came up with an idea to raise money to provide kids in New Mexico who didn't have enough income, to provide them with backpacks and school supplies. And he came to us. My chief of staff, Nancy Marquez, went up and got a donation of 75 backpacks. One of our board members kicked in $3,500, and we had an event. 5 of the football players showed up at a middle school. We gave out 75 backpacks full of school supplies to kids that would never have had them. And the kids loved it. They loved to interact with the players. I mean, the players like it, but for a guy like Deuce Jones, to me, it was that's an incredible use of the NIL. And again this weekend, at football game, we're gonna be inside the stadium, the little table. You won't hear this until after, but if you were at the football game when you hear this,
future football games,
future football games also, we are going to have this weekend. We're going to have a couple of 3 men and a couple of 3 women basketball players at our booth, taking selfies, signing autographs. They're all part of our team.
Why wouldn't that have been allowed prior? It blows my mind that the NCAA, this is what you talked about earlier, when the NCAA getting in their own way, really, in a lot of ways. Stuff like this there were hurdles in front of stuff like this.
Yeah, there were. And, I think if I had suggested it a year ago, my buddy Dave Williams would have keeled over.
Yeah.
That's that separation that Eddie was talking about. So the separation is in more the financial, legal aspect.
Who's paying for the backpacks and that kind of stuff.
Exactly. So the fact that we're a licensed partner, and we pay for our license. We have the right to use the logo. You're in the pit. You see us on the message board. You hear Portnoy talk about us on Lobo Talk, that type of thing. But yeah, it seemed like a no-brainer to me. And UNM was, of course, again, that goes back to the reluctance. Like, wow, on the site, on the stadium, is that a problem? And the answer is it's not. And so here we go. We start Saturday.
How do these contracts work in terms of a player getting kicked off the team, transferring, leaving? Are they set up in a way where you guys break ties with them as soon as they break ties with the team in any way?
Pretty much. But I will tell you, our contract is incredibly player friendly.
Okay.
I came at this with the first player I negotiated with after he committed to UNM didn't have an agent. And I'm from a world where we do 30, 40, 50-page contracts that are hideous in the legal world. I drafted a one-page contract because I didn't want to freak a kid out.
Yeah.
And the contract basically says you owe me an appearance or a photography shot once a month. We also make it mandatory that they attend a marketing and an accounting class to learn about the financial implications of receiving money.
Sure.
They're not employees. They're in essence individual independent contractors, so their tax isn't taken out. But they're paid generally over the year. They must be eligible in school, and they must be a member in good standing of a team at UNM.
I will ask one more specific UNM question, and then I'm gonna hand it over to you to tell people how they can get involved and how you guys are making your money and all that. I'm gonna put you on the spot here, and this is what the curiosity of a lot of people is, and I'm curious what kind of money. You did say some people are getting no money that are under contract with you, some athletes. What kind of money has a place like UNM or some schools in the Mountain West? How much money are the top end athletes getting? Are you at liberty to at least ballpark it for us? 6
figures.
Even here?
Even here.
And with that, is that something that you can, I think I know the answer, but that has helped keep some players here. That has helped with recruiting, even if you guys weren't the recruiters.
Correct. More importantly, we have a sort of a motto, and it's retain is the first R. It is not an NCAA violation to tell someone who's on campus, if you stay, this is what we can pay you for your name, image, and likeness
They're
next
already
year.
Here.
Let me tell you, on the men's basketball team, 2 players were approached illegally, or at least by NCAA rules.
Sure.
Tampered with, I guess. I'm not sure of the language. It was made known, maybe not directly. There's still the old recruiting game, the AAU coach, the high school
and it's
coach,
happened a long time.
the grandfather.
Yeah.
That a couple of players at UNM were offered, in essence, greener pastures. And we didn't actually get to that certain level, but we made it comfortable for them to stay. And that's a big... Hey, in NIL, the big issue is the transfer portal.
Yeah.
You get... If you can finish in 3 years, you can literally transfer twice second time as a graduate student. Yep. So now that we're timing out of the
COVID year.
The COVID year, yeah, we're not going to see much more of the 5-year guys, I don't think. But then there's Mr. Baker,
7-year guy,
who's one of my faves. But yeah, that's retention is what, and we're working hard with the football community because the wins and losses will come, but we have some high-end football players out there, and if we can't compete, they're gone.
A lot of them left last year.
Yeah, they did.
So, how do you get this money?
Okay, well, there's a lot of ways, but you can find me on the street. But the easiest way is to go to our website, 505sports.org. We have multiple levels. We'll take. Hey, listen, I think you can donate 50 cents online. We're glad to have it. We have a reoccurring plan, $20 a month, where we have a weekly newsletter. As long as I'm awake, we get it out. We had an open practice with the men's basketball. We will have pretty much monthly events. We've kind of merged with the old Lobo Layer website. If you want to participate in the message board, that comes with the $20 a month level. Of course, we have Catalyst Club, $2,500 a year. We have all sorts of gear. And then, of course, our founders, and that's $25,000 and more. But we're also out there looking, and I'm really pushing for interaction with the business community.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important thing. All the research we've done and have been given to us shows, especially in a town like Albuquerque, there's no major league team here. When the Lobos fill the pit, when 25,000 people fill the football stadium, the town thrives.
Yeah, last year kind of showed that with Lobo basketball.
Also shows it in Albuquerque. I think the first time in 11 years you can't buy a suite in the pit. Ticket sales. will be strong. We'll have a sellout earlier than we did last year. And I think, just as a little comment, I don't want to put any pressure on Mr. Pitino.
No, of course not.
But 50 years I've been here 50 years watching basketball. This is the deepest roster and most talented roster UNM has ever had. And I'll put that up against the Kenny Thomas, Michael Cooper. Those guys played 6, 7 guys. Yeah. There's 11 ball players, 12 ball players out here. And we're still missing a scholarship.
Are you making any guarantees?
Oh, no. I've had those discussions with Mr. Pitino where he said, well, if we're no good, is it your fault? I said, no. No. I just help with the ingredients. You got to bake the cake, dude.
The run San Diego State made last year, probably as reluctant as a Lobo fan can be, probably helps to convince people locally that it can happen at this level, that a Mountain West school can, with the right ingredients, bake the cake that can get all the way to the Final Four if done right.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But can you imagine San Diego has, the Padres and they're close to LA. Everyone's a Dodger fan. If they're not a Padre fan, they had pro football that's up the street. If the Lobos made the national championship game, this place would be nuts. In San Diego, it registered a blip, but the university made out very, very well. So the idea is for men's basketball and women's basketball, we're working there too, is to have the talent and good student athletes to make a run in March.
Kurt, I appreciate you for coming on. I know you've been on twice now, and a lot of this is repetitive at this point. You're doing an awful lot of repetitive explaining to people, but I do appreciate it. I am hoping, as you guys are trying to get some of these athletes that you have under contract, platforms to do whatever for the business community. This platform and the Albuquerque Journal obviously is very interested in somehow figuring out a way to work with you guys on that front. And of course, still covering the teams, the good and the bad. But we do hope that there's some opportunities that, we can work with you guys as well. And I do appreciate you for coming on. Thanks a lot.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks, Jeff.
All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Kurt Roth and the ever-changing world of college athletics and NIL in particular, some of the challenges that UNM and Lobo athletes are facing, some of the answers that hopefully he was able to provide you, the viewer and the readers and listeners to this show about what is really going on with NIL and how college athletes can now get paid, which they weren't allowed to do just a couple years ago. And the NCAA still kind of has some restrictions on all that. It's a tough world to navigate. Kurt Roth and his group doing a great job in helping UNM athletics retain athletes every bit as much as recruit them. I know a lot of people think this is pay to play and trying to recruit athletes to come to a particular school. A lot of this is about retaining athletes to keep them at your school. I'm glad he talked quite a bit about that. So hopefully you know a little bit more about the NIL world, and hope you're enjoying these shows. Hope you're enjoying these conversations we're having with people around the UNM Lobo basketball community and UNM athletics in general. It's part of the Albuquerque Journal podcast network, but also abqjournal.com's digital product. We're really putting out a whole lot more effort into video, into some of these podcasts, and into our coverage in general. And there is a new digital subscription offer that we are offering right now for sports fans in particular. There are Lobo basketball tickets available if you subscribe at abqjournal.com/subscribe/sports. Will get you directly to this $59.99 1-year access to everything at ABQ digitally, abqjournal.com, but also the e-edition, the PDF print replica of our every page that goes into print. You get a copy of that. I know some of you fans are maybe parents of athletes, out-of-state fans that are just watching this podcast or following our coverage from elsewhere, can't get the print edition. This offer is especially for you. And if you subscribe, the first 50 subscribers by October 21st will receive 2 tickets to the November 16th UNM Lobo men's basketball game against UT Arlington. If you subscribe between October 22nd and the end of the month, October 31st, one person will be entered into a drawing to win 10 free Lobo tickets for a yet-to-be-determined Lobo basketball game later in the season. We also have a QR code running in the print edition of the Albuquerque Journal that you could just scan your phone. It takes you right to the page if you want to go there and subscribe. But it comes out to about $5 a month. It is a great deal. It's our best deal right now for all full, complete access to our digital product at abqjournal.com. And once again, appreciate you for listening and watching all of these shows. Hoping to see you again next week.